Hi and welcome to Hoffman's Hot Seat. I'm Tom Hoffman with One-to-One Media, coming to you from the Gartner Customer 360 Summit in Los Angeles. I'm joined today by Larry Ritter, Senior Vice President and General Manager for Sage CRM Solutions. Today we'll be talking about opportunities and gaps for market leaders to apply social CRM. Larry, thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks. Good to be here, Tom.
So on this point, what are some of the gaps that you are seeing in the market with respect to how marketing leaders are or may not be approaching the social CRM?
Okay, well, I think that's a great question. I think one of the first things, one of the big gaps is clear definitions about what is social CRM. I think it's a term that gets kind of tossed around a lot by people, and there's clearly a lot of relevance to it because we really want to understand what our customers are saying about us, how do we find out more about prospects and opportunities. And so I think perhaps one of the first gaps is really just defining what it is you're trying to accomplish from it. From a marketing standpoint, you're trying to manage awareness and image, and from a sales perspective, you're trying to find more leads. From a support, you're trying to respond to hot items before they become infernos, right. Those types of things.
Okay. So among Sage's customers, what would you say are some of the best practices that you're seeing being applied?
Okay, well, we kind of take a step back there a little bit from Sage customers. We're kind of doing two parts of social CRM. One is we have a lot of customers ourselves, and so we use a lot of the social media tools. So maybe something you might not have thought about from us so much, but we have active online communities. Like we have more than 20,000 ACT users in our ACT community. We've got several thousand in our SalesLogic CRM community. And so we use that a lot to have our blogs and forums and manage that. So one of the best practices for our customers is just to join those, because then they can hear about what's going on from us and also to hear about what's going on amongst each other. As part of that community, we have a lot of these connections in Facebook and LinkedIn and whatever. And honestly, a day doesn't go by when I don't get many threads from these various customers where they're saying things like, how do I search for a certain type of thing, or how would I create this type of form or whatever in the systems. And so one of the best practices is customers are helping themselves, from that standpoint. And so that's from like us using social media with our customers. Now within our products, I think some of the best practices people are doing is they are using some of the basic web-based search capabilities that we've built in. Like, for example, in ACT and SalesLogic, what we do is make it really easy so that when I'm in context of, say, like your contact or your company, that it just brings up whatever it has about you on Twitter or LinkedIn or wherever. And so I go, oh, there's something new here. I see he's published something or whatever.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of a common best practice that we see quite a bit of.
That's interesting. So applying and utilizing social CRM to learn more about social CRM too.
It sure is, and actually it's funny, it made me think of another example. One of the things that I found people use a lot, in fact I've had a couple of people write to me from my blog, is that they do these Twitter interest searches. So like, for example, when you're talking to somebody, like if you're in my base, I put in like a custom field to say you're interested in like soapbox derby racing or whatever. And so every time I go to your record, it searches the Twitter sphere with the hashtags to find out what's the latest in soapbox derbies. I go, oh, Tom, I realize that the big contest is next weekend or whatever, and suddenly I'm much more of like an authority and connected to you. And so those are maybe just another simple best practice of just using these things to just kind of enrich the dialogue that you're having.
Absolutely. So what would you recommend as some best practices or at least starting points for leaders who are just starting to get started down the social CRM path?
Okay. Well, I think people are in all different, phases, here. You got large companies, you got small companies, you got whatever. I think everybody feels that, oh my gosh, I got to be doing something in social media or else I'm totally left behind. And I wouldn't panic, first thing I'd recommend is to not panic. But maybe to kind of start small and think big and ask yourself, what do we think we're trying to accomplish here from a sales perspective, a marketing perspective, support perspective? Because there's just, you can go crazy with this and say, my goodness, I've got to go and do data mining of huge amounts of data to find out all the sentiment. Is that really where you want to start? Or do you want to start with kind of more just dynamic interactions and how do I enrich or find more about people I already know or find more people like them in social media? How do I just get communities going where I can interact with my customers. And also, I would encourage people to blog and things like that. So you can think about things from both a proactive and a reactive, and I think social media is generally very proactive. But you know, if all you're doing is just following what people are saying about you in Twitter, you know, that isn't particularly proactive, right? But if you kind of create groups and forums where you're kind of, whether that's controlling the conversation, but participating in the conversation, I think is really helpful for creating those opportunities.
Yeah, so it sounds like, you know, starting with small initiatives, learning from them, and then growing from there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great.
Sure.
Well, Larry, thanks so much for your time today. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it, Tom.
Thanks
for being here.